Update 5.8 is out now, and we got 5 new weapons and refines to talk about. Today we'll be discussing new skills for Bridal Sanaki, Maribelle, Ares, Laegjarn, and Finn. We'll also be covering some build ideas and general playstyles. We got some very nice surprises in this one. First off is Bridal Sanaki. She's a green flying mage with a focus on attack and resistance with some decent speed and the usual very low physical bulk. Sanaki will be our seasonal refine for this update. Her tome is the Nifl Frostflowers, and this thing got a big change to its base effect. First off, it grants a flat +3 attack. If Sanaki is within 3 spaces of an ally, she gets +5 attack and res during combat. Additionally, she gets extra attack based on the number of allies within 3 spaces, times 2, and this is going to cap out at +4 attack. So originally, Nifl Frostflowers used to boost attack and speed, but now the speed boost is completely gone. It's replaced by extra resistance, and the range of the old effect has been bumped up to 3 spaces. The max +4 attack will require 2 nearby allies, and this will be on top of the +5 attack and res boost. Now for the special refine, at the start of combat, if the foe has more than 50% HP, grant another +5 attack and resistance, and another bonus to attack equal to the highest attack field buff on allies within 2 spaces. Good lord, so Nifl Frostflowers has 5 different attack increasing effects, and Sanaki will get a nice +10 resistance as well. For the refine, she will borrow the highest attack buff on her allies, and this is only within a range of 2 spaces instead of 3 spaces like the base effect. That's a bit odd. However, Sanaki is generating a ton of extra attack here. She gets +5 attack for being near any ally, +4 attack if she's near 2 allies, +5 attack versus healthy foes, and then another attack boost via attack buffs on her teammates. If an ally had a +6 attack field buff, Sanaki could hit a staggering +20 extra attack, and if you include the flat +3 attack, this is basically equivalent to a Blade Tome fully powered up with +6 field buffs. I feel like Nifl Frostflowers is trying to do something similar to Ashera, where Sanaki can get Blade Tome-like damage, but without having to worry about having her own field buffs neutralized. I don't imagine a lot of people have highly invested Bridal Sanakis, but if you do run into one with this refine, you do need to be a bit careful. In terms of builds, I do feel like this refine could work on a basic budget set. Sanaki could just continue stacking attack with death blow skills, and you just need to try and play it like a Blade Tome with incredible single hit damage. Obviously, if you can get a Rain C skill, that'd be nice, and Far Trace would also add more res debuffs as well. While Nifl Frostflowers no longer grants bonus speed, it's not like Sanaki has super low base speed. You can easily use Swiss Sparrow type skills instead of Death Blow, and Sanaki could score some extra doubles. One concern for Sanaki is her really low defense and HP. It's going to be real hard to salvage that, but the refine does add +10 resistance on top of her base 33 res, and we can work with that. You could use Mirror Impact for another 10 res and maybe prevent a follow-up attack. Additionally, Sanaki could go for attack and res push 4, attack and res bond 4, or attack and res unity. Fittingly, all of those skills are available on her sister or her great ancestor. If you stack more resistance, you can run Mystic Boost to handle dragons or mitigate the push 4 recoil damage. As a flying mage, Sanaki has access to the fly mobility skills, so she can be pretty scary with one-hit attacks, considering she's pretty much activating the entirety of her weapon. If you can't get a Rain C skill, Joint Horn Attack actually works very nicely for the self buffs, and she's going to buff her allies, which Sanaki will just borrow again herself. Another option is Attack and Res Menace, because the menace skills are real scary when they do land, and they can cover a ton of extra damage for initiators like Sanaki, who are already stacking lots of bonus damage. Overall, I don't imagine you'll suddenly see more Bridal Sanakis all of a sudden out there, much less a +10 one. However, if you do see one maybe on a Flyer Emblem team or something, you probably don't want to let her attack first. A bit of a strange refine, but it's tough to argue with all that extra attack. Next up is Maribelle, a cavalry healer who got a new weapon. Maribelle will break out her umbrella and is going to use it as her punishment staff. This is a 14-weight weapon that grants damage like other weapon types, aka Wrathful Staff. If Maribelle initiates combat, she gains +4 attack and speed. After combat, if she attacked, she inflicts the Triangle Adept status on the target and falls within 2 spaces of that target. So Punishment Staff basically combines the Trilemma Staff with Wrathful Staff and Swiss Sparrow 2. I never really thought about it, but I don't think there was ever another healer with Trilemma besides Maribelle. It was kind of already her own unique staff. Now, for the special upgrade, at the start of the turn, if Maribelle is within 2 spaces of an ally, grant +6 attack and the Cancel Affinity status to Maribelle and allies within 2 spaces. Alrighty then, so this is something new. Basically, Maribelle buffs herself and allies with +6 attack every turn, and she's gonna give everyone Cancel Affinity. one of the most niche skills in the game, Cancel Affinity only works if the enemy has Triangle Adept. What it does is reverse the weapon triangle disadvantage from Triangle Adept skills. So instead of facing a massive minus 40% attack loss with the enemy gaining plus 40 attack, the Cancel Affinity user will now just have a neutral matchup. Neither unit will gain bonus attack or lose attack. As you can tell, Punishment Staff solves the issue of Cancel Affinity requiring the foe to run Triangle Adept by forcibly putting Triangle Adept on them as a status. Originally, you would have to apply Trilemma, then an ally using Cancel Affinity could get the neutral matchups then. Now, Maribelle does all of this by herself by giving Cancel Affinity as a status to her teammates. As an example, let's say Maribelle hits the enemy with Triangle Adept. If you have a red unit, normally they would just get destroyed by blue foes since they now have Triangle Adept active. However, our red unit now has Cancel Affinity, and against any blue foes with Triangle Adept, they're going to get a neutral matchup, and they keep the advantageous matchups against green foes. It's a very strange interaction that I don't think I have seen a ton of use, but Punishment Staff brings it in one package now. Now, besides the Triangle Adept and Cancel Affinity interaction, Punishment Staff does give Maribelle a ton of attack with some speed. As a cavalry healer with decent base attack and speed stats, this weapon increases Maribelle's own damage output, and like other offensive healers, Maribelle is free to stack more attack and speed. She has Dazzling Staff by default for the Wrathful plus Dazzling Staff combo, and in total she's getting plus 10 attack and plus fracture speed. As a cavalry unit, Maribelle can run Attack and Speed Catch if you don't want to run Attack and Speed Push 4, and for Sacred Seals, you got Attack and Speed Solo or Bond, or the fun new Blade Session Seal. Not really much else to it for offensive staff users. For C skills, you could go with Savage Blow since healers can't run Smoke Devos. Maribelle could run the Odd or Even Recovery C skills since those are quite powerful. She could also run another buffing skill since Punishment Staff does provide that plus 6 attack buff. You could run Fortified Cavalry for Horse Emblem teams, or maybe a Tactic buff could be fun too. Something I'm a bit disappointed in is that when Maribelle applies this interesting Triangle Adept and Cancel Affinity combo, she can only do it safely with Dazzling Staff as her B skill. Punishment Staff only has Wrathful Staff, and unlike Inheritable Staff Refines, you're not able to choose between the two. If you could, then Maribelle could run Far Trace to get Kanto and still have Dazzling Staff. That could open up some interesting hit and run tactics, and you could let an ally tank the entire enemy team without having to face disadvantageous matchups. Of course, you can do this if you only attack melee foes who can't fight back, but that's a bit of a stretch for PvP modes. The potential of Punishment Staff is still very interesting though. If you aren't really keen on the Triangle Adept or Cancel Affinity part, then Maribelle is still a really nice offensive healer to have around. Next up we have Ares and his Dark Mystletainn. Ares actually shares Dark Mystletainn with his father, Eldigan. They are both Sword Cavaliers and their stats are not super different like we had with 2 Grimas last month. Ares is more offensive, which does do better with Dark Mystletainn. Eldigan can run it just fine, however the issue is that Ares is a 3 to 4 star unit who was demoted after his banner, and Eldigan was stuck as a 5 star only unit. Like Reinhardt and Owen, it was just easier to get for more people to get Ares, especially for merging. As such, I'm mainly only going to be focusing on him, but feel free to give Eldigan this weapon. Eldigan did get a resplendent outfit though, and the stat boost does put him in a slightly better spot. There is some merit to having more defensive stats with this weapon, but even with the refined Dark Mystletainn is mainly focusing on damage output. Let's now talk about the actual weapon. To no surprise, Dark Mystletainn did not change its base effect. It's a 60 might sword with faster specials and special spiral 3. If special triggers before or during combat, grant -2 special cooldown after combat. For one, slaying plus special spiral on a weapon is just incredible. Cavaliers cannot even run special spiral at all, so Ares from the very start had his own niche to himself. For the special upgrade, if the foe initiates or if they have more than 75% HP, grant plus 5 attack and defense and deal plus 7 damage on special trigger. So it does state before or during combat, and this is basically talking about it working with AoE specials or normal specials like Bonfire. You can't double dip the plus 7 damage. As with any special spiral user, Ares wants to continuously proc his special over and over. He gets plus 7 damage each time now, and the plus 5 attack boost also adds up. Ares and Eldigan both have okay defense stats, so more defense is nice. However, their res stats are not great, so you gotta watch out for magic damage. The general idea for this refine just keeps playing into Dark Mystletain's niche of spamming tons of specials. It's not gonna really change the old builds, but it does make them stronger. So, the Ares build you will see a lot is Distant Counter and Vantage. Special Spiral plus Vantage is nasty because you just have your special ready at all times for the advantage proc, and since Dark Mystletainn also accelerates specials, Ares can run 3 cooldown specials. He normally runs Bonfire because of his decent base defense stat, and it's going to scale easier than Draconic Aura. With the Refine, each Bonfire proc gains an extra 7 damage. Ares also gets +5 attack, and the +5 defense equates to at least 2 extra Bonfire damage. In total, you can see this Refine adding +14 extra damage to the Bonfire build. With Distant Counter, Ares can counter ranged foes, and Vantage obviously lets him Bonfire first. You ideally want to go for the one shot with this setup, and Ares can run Brazen Attack and Defense, since that's another +7 attack and defense to use. If Vantage is active, then the Brazen skills are active. If you don't have Distant Counter, you can just run another Brazen Attack and Defense A skill. The issue with double Brazens is that Ares gets 0 health before charging his first Bonfire's proc. The Refine at least gives him +5 attack and defense now, but you could also run skills like Attack and Defense Catch or Attack and Defense Solo to replace the Brazens. These are going to give stat boosts immediately, and we need to keep Ares alive to even get the Special Spiral part going. Speed can also be a factor for this since Ares isn't that fast, and obviously magic damage is not great to face. That's kind of why he has DC plus Vantage in the first place. Now if you aren't running Vantage, then you could fit in low attack and defense or a near trace Kanto B skill. I think a Kanto plus AoE special build would be neat to try for PvE. These could be fun, but again, don't really solve the issue of charging that first special. Unfortunately, that is kind of the main concern for Ares and Dark Mystletainn, and the Refine didn't really help with that. It pretty much went all in on the damage aspect, which is fine, but maybe some different effects could have been more interesting. You could try to run more brawly builds with something like Heavy Blade or Aether, but then you have to figure out if you want extra speed or if you even want to add any extra bonus resistance. I do think there is room for more creative builds, especially with full +10 merges, and we have been getting more interesting cavalry skills like Flow Refresh. Maybe Ares will synergize with a future skill a bit better. Moving on, we got Laegjarn with a Refine for Niu. Let's see what Laegjarn gets before her showdown with Fjorm. Niu did get some changes to its base effect. It still grants a flat +3 speed and now grants bonus to all Laegjarn stats during combat equal to 40% of the total bonuses on Laegjarn and the foe. This now has a cap of +10 to all stats. So technically, with the +10 cap, Niu's base effect has a lower stat boost. Before, it was 50% of the total bonuses on the foe, so if the foe had +6 to all stats, that would be a total of 24, and 50% of that would give Laegjarn +12 to all stats. This is very powerful, except it's entirely dependent on the foe having max field boss. For a slightly lower ceiling, Laegjarn can use the field boss on herself to proc Niu as well. To hit the max +10 to all stats, you need a total of 25 bonuses on Laegjarn or the enemy. This gives Laegjarn a lot more control since you can buff her directly. Now for the actual Refine effect, at the start of combat, if Laegjarn has more than 25% HP, she gains +4 to all stats and no follow-up 3. This is the same bonuses as Ryoma's Raigento Refine, except with a different activation condition. Now, like with Legendary Ryoma, no follow-up is fantastic for Laegjarn because flyers can't get no follow-up anyway, although they did just get Flow Refresh. Flow Refresh is only the offensive portion though, whereas Laegjarn can stop enemy guaranteed follow-up attacks. In total, Niu at full potential can give Laegjarn +14 to all stats. When you think about it, that is pretty wild, and it's honestly not that impossible to achieve either. +6 field buffs to all stats pretty much gets you almost there. With no follow-up and all of these stat boosts, Laegjarn is going to be a tough target to take down. Niu is still kind of dependent on field buffs in some way, but at least Laegjarn will get some bonuses at the very least. It's definitely a lot more of a reliable weapon now than before. As with any other stat stacking unit, Laegjarn has a lot of options. Her res stat is pretty much her main downside, but her attack, speed, and defense stats are all solid to begin with. If you just want to go for damage, you can run double solo skills, a Rain C skill, and still have room for a Kanto Near Trace B skill. This type of build is fine, but Laegjarn isn't self-buffing herself for the base effect of Niu. Obviously, if you have an ally with buffing support, this can be remedied, and you still borrow the buffs on the enemy. Next, I want to talk about the use of no follow-up with Guard Bearing. I didn't really think about this combo with Legendary Ryoma because he has Bushido, but they are similar in aspects because they both have damage reduction. With no follow-up, you prevent those slower enemies with follow-up skills from hitting you twice, and Guard Bearing gives you 50% damage reduction on the first attack in the enemy phase. pretty good synergy right there, and Laegjarn doesn't really have a mandatory B skill since she's putting together so many stats anyway. You could go for Dive Bomb or Desperation, but if you get the bonus stats from Niu, her defense stat is going to be quite high as well. I do think Laegjarn can for sure run catch skills, and you can customize the Rain C skills to your liking. Speaking of which, here's a skill combo I put together recently on my Vaulter, the Wyvern Flight plus Attack and Defense Menace build. The Attack and Defense Menace buffs and debuffs work very nicely to proc the full effect of Wyvern Flight, and Laegjarn for sure has the right stat spread for this skill. It does use flat stat checks, so you could run it with Fortress Defense and Res, but maybe that's not the best choice. You could run Fury, but remember Niu has a 25% HP condition, so I don't think you want the extra recoil damage without running a healing special. An extra benefit to running Menace over a Rain C skill is that Laegjarn is going to be able to buff herself. Again, that's not a must, but since we can control Niu's base effect now, it's going to be good to have field buffs on Laegjarn as much as possible. Legendary Azura is obviously a perfect partner for the job. Overall, Laegjarn did solve one of the issues with her old weapon. She has input on its base effect now, and getting no fall upon a flyer is very good, especially since Laegjarn can make use of the defensive portion as well. I don't know where this Nifl vs Mystletainn revival plot is going, but it's working out quite nicely for our Book 2 weapon refines. Last up is the dark horse of this batch. Finn is 100% coming out with a win here. He got a brand new weapon, the Loyalty Spear. This is a 10 might weapon that grants +4 speed and inflicts -4 defense and resistance. Additionally, it always attacks twice even on the enemy phase. Wow, so this is actually an awesome weapon for a heroic rail unit. Loyalty Spear is a dual phase Ninja Yari Lance. The ninja weapons are brave weapons that actually boost speed instead of decreasing it, which makes them better for quad attacking. They instead inflict a defense res penalty, so the user is going to take more damage. Honestly, these are fine weapons by themselves, but Loyalty Spear adds the brave attacks for the enemy phase as well. That's very neat, even if Finn would prefer to do the attacking first. Now, it gets better with the special refine. At the start of combat, if Finn has more than 25% HP, inflict -4 attack, speed, and defense on the foe, and neutralize their attack and defense field buffs. The icon looks like low attack, speed, and defense, but that's not exactly that. Finn does inflict 3 debuffs, but he does not neutralize speed field buffs. It's more like low attack and defense with the added -4 speed on the side. Altogether, Loyalty Spear is one heck of a weapon. I wouldn't say it's Brave Hector levels of busted, but this is about as good as it gets for a heroic rail unit, much less a Lance Cavalier who has a ton of competition. From his stats, we can see that Finn has okay attack and speed stats. His old Brave Lance tanked his speed, but now Loyalty Spear is giving Finn effectively +8 speed, which is a massive difference. He keeps the Brave attacks, and it has more might than the Ninja Yari, and is going to give him 3 HP. Additionally, you get a -4 defense debuff, and you neutralize defense field buffs, which is just extra damage. You then have the -4 attack debuff, basically cancelling out the defense res penalty. This weapon is amazing, all things considered. A lot of other dual phase brave weapons tend to be on your min-maxed units with low speed and higher attack, defense, and res stats. For Finn, Loyalty Spear is definitely more of an offensive weapon. He can get some wax in on the enemy phase, but like Laegjarn, he's got a really low res stat to start with. It also just makes more sense for a Cavalier to abuse their 3 movements for initiations. Finn is in a really good spot for build options. The extra +8 speed advantage puts him in contention for quad attacks, and you already have low attack and defense neutralizing field buffs. You could run low speed and defense to neutralize 3 field buffs, and you get the additional speed and defense debuffs. I think that's fine even if you overlap some parts of the effects. For full player phase builds, you can run Swiss Sparrow, but solo skills work too. Despite only having 10 might, you could also run Heavy Blade. The -4 attack debuff on the refine helps keep Finn competitive a bit more, and he does stop attack buffs as well. Now, if you want updated skills, Finn can make use of all the new fun toys Cavaliers got this year. Attack and speed catch is fantastic and can work with the dual phase part of the brave attacks, unlike Swiss Sparrow. Neo Trace is a great skill since Finn doesn't need a low B skill, and it's just more debuffs to work with as well. Then you got the Menace C skills, which do fit the attack range of melee Cavaliers. They aren't perfect, but something like Attack and Defense Menace can also boost Finn's own defensive capabilities a little bit more. Earlier we talked about DC plus Vantage for Ares' special Spiral Spam, but that combo also works with the Loyalty Spear. I don't think it's ideal for Finn, but the idea is that you use Vantage to attack twice first, and hopefully you're going to kill the squishy range target first. You could build defensively, but again, I think you should use the long range of the Cavalier, especially with this type of weapon. best case is to run skills like Attack and Defense Catch or Attack and Defense Solo, which are going to give you stats on either phase. Next, let's talk about Flow Refresh, the newest skill available for Cavaliers. This is going to give no follow-up for making follow-up attacks, and you get 10 HP after combat. If you want Finn to quad tankier foes, then Flow Refresh is probably needed because a lot of them have follow-up prevention. But keep in mind that if you aren't getting the kill in 2 hits, you also charge the enemy's special faster, and this is very bad against special fighter army units. If you're on Desperation, you could hit all 4 times immediately, but then you're susceptible to follow-up prevention skills. Like Laegjarn, I don't think there are must-have skills for Finn, and he has room for different types of setups. If you're on a budget, you could literally just go with double death blow, like with Sanaki. Sometimes these simpler builds work just fine. In conclusion, Finn got a very nice surprise. He literally carves a niche for himself in a sea of Lance Cavaliers, and for a heroic Grail unit, that is impressive. I've heard he's a fan favorite, so I'm definitely very happy for him. That's going to be it for this video. Fun group of refines this time. I could see everyone getting used. Let me know your thoughts on each of these weapons or refines. We'll be covering the Pirate Banner next time, so I'll see you guys there.